Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, the news edition of the week, where we have some Seahawks news to talk about. We're going to sort of look ahead to week 4 against the Detroit Lions and also look back at week 3 versus the, it was so bad, I've almost forgot, Atlanta Falcons through the perspectives of Pete Carroll's press conferences, his radio appearance, and, Clint Hurt talking to the media. DK Metcalf already kind of trying to talk some smack and all that goodness. Yeah, let's start with DK Metcalf, Ty. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun when, guys are sending shots. I love receivers talking. Why not? And especially in this year, why not? Talk your stuff. So I like DK doing this. Now, I kind of want to ask you like how you feel about the comments from a scheme perspective, how you think maybe accurate or not so accurate they might be with old Jeffrey Okudah.
Well, let's outline what DK Metcalf said.
Yeah.
So he said that essentially Okudah, the implication was Okudah wasn't as tough a matchup one-on-one because he wasn't playing one-on-one. He had safety help over the top. Have I got that correct?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Well, this is funny to me coming from Metcalf because the Seahawks offense has always had this thing where it seems like they're running loads of shell defense. Like there's no one-on-ones. Like they're doubling DK. It's like, well, it's not a true double in like the man double sense where you have a man-to-man guy following that guy across the field and then another man-to-man guy bracketing that guy across the field. It's zone coverage. So it's but for like the layman, it is kind of a double coverage when DK runs down the field deep. And what does DK Metcalf do from a route tree perspective? Like he runs a dig occasionally, but really it's go routes, comebacks, hitches, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. So when he's getting this, say, a cloud cornerback playing to him and the deep half safety over the top, like cover 2, if you're running downfield against that, you're getting removed from the play, as we saw what basically killed. Well, part of what killed the Let Russ Cook era was teams just doing that to DK every single time, and DK just being removed from the play. From a Lions perspective, I know that they're mixing their coverages, so they do that, and then they do quarter half, where instead of having a cover 2 cornerback, you have a cover 4 cornerback, and then a guy camped in your dig window. DK can play on the sort of comeback stuff on that, but realistically, like the reason Tyler Lockett's been getting most of these intermediate catches and these kind of catches in space is because he has the route running skill set, not skill, because DK is a good route runner. He's just a big dude, right? But Lockett has the kind of skill set to separate and get open against these kinds of shell coverages. Whereas for Metcalf, it is often a frustrating day of basically catching 15-yard, 10-yard hitches, comebacks, the occasional slant, and the very rare, although less rare with Geno Smith, dig route against, quarters. So does that answer your question, Ty?
Yeah, pretty much. So when it comes to Okudah, obviously we've seen him, just recently this past week shut down Justin Jefferson. We've seen, he's had a really good start to the year. So that's going to be interesting. And of course, I'm sure that's probably how they're going to play DK, and we'll see how that all matches up. But it's a little interesting. I mean, do you think, what do you think about when receivers do this? Do you think that they're setting themselves up for failure doing this? Because it does seem like it always bites receivers in the tail side when this when they do kind of pop off a little bit. I haven't seen many receivers go after corners and then actually back that up on the field. At least that come to my mind.
Right. And here's the thing, Ty. We've picked up a few new listeners. Thank you very much. And for those of you who've recently tuned in or have forgotten, I am a defensive guy first and foremost. I have a background in defensive backs, as in coaching them, briefly playing it at a very bad level. And I don't like receivers, generally speaking. And they do like to talk, don't they? And all of this stuff. DK's actually been talking like a lot in press conferences. Like I think like 1 week he was asked about watching receiver tape, and he was like, "I don't need to watch them because they're playing against me." It's like, okay, that's lame. But it's all good. It's all fun and games, right? Yeah, it could end badly. Like I don't see how it changes against Detroit from the same issues that they're faced
Right.
faced. Like it is what it is. Like now the compensation is where if they're using these coverages where they're putting 2 over a player or 3 over 2 or 4 over 3, they're playing 2 high safeties. Well, then they've lost the safety from the box, and so you should be able to run the ball more effectively. You should be more efficient running the football because they've lost that numbers advantage with the exchange of gaining a coverage player or coverage guy on the back end at least, and that gives you more flexibility in the coverages you run. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think DK is suddenly going to transition into being great? Do you like it when he talks smack?
I mean, like I don't mind it. Like I said, I like it. Like it's fun. It's all fun and games at the end of the day, and we're ultimately playing a game at the end of the day here. We're talking about a game made for children. But like it's I don't know if it's like it doesn't really change anything for me, right? Like we know like what it's going to be, how they're going to defend DK, and it's just really like can the Seahawks get into their game? Can they create opportunities for DK? Can they get the ball in his hands, and can they get him to make stuff happen? It's pretty much it, right? That's all it comes down to. So yeah, I'm not really like this. To me isn't really necessarily a storyline heading into the game. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen between DK and Jeff Okuda? Like, I don't care, but like they do need to get him involved more though, and they tried to against Atlanta, and obviously he's got to catch more balls in that situation with all the targets that he got. Didn't he end up getting like 11 or 12 in that game, and he only caught
This
4 or
is the
5?
thing. Like this is the thing with his route tree and with the context of how teams are playing him as well. Like, and without Russell Wilson, right, who before teams were going like into these middle field open looks when it was still like largely a single high one-on-one outside world. Russ was so efficient and such an incredible deep ball thrower and a moon ball thrower, right? And so DK's efficiency was kind of up through his route tree of like basically up and down sideline stuff, right? Now he can play in the slot as well a bit, but it's still vertical kind of deals.
Yeah.
But now you've got Geno Smith, who's obviously like no one's as good as Russell Wilson, and we've got some Pete Carroll comments sort of on that, which I'd like to delve into a bit later.
Yeah,
but no one's as good as Russell Wilson at throwing the deep ball. Geno's okay, like he has some patchy sort of underthrows on that, and especially throwing like the sideline go ball stuff. But ultimately, like a lot of the Metcalf targets is like there's some variance there. There should be a bit more inefficient. But also, he's never, well, not never, but he's always, I should say, had moments where he doesn't look like a natural catcher. Like his hands become hard. He drops the football. Some unfortunate things where he's almost trying so hard to catch the ball that he's battling it and ends in the ball falling incomplete. And so, again, I haven't delved back into the Falcons tape yet. That is my task after this at 4 a.m. as a normal person would do. I'll probably
have to mention tape review tomorrow. Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes, and I will have all the tape watched for tomorrow's podcast.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, where was I going with that? Just it's kind of who Metcalf is, and I didn't realize he had 11 targets. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think he only caught like 4 or 5 of them. That's but again, like you said, right? Like it's just he's limited, and that doesn't mean that he's not good, right? Like he's very good, but it's just there's only certain things that he can really do particularly well, and he excels at those. So yeah, I'd like to see them try to figure out a way to get him involved because he is such a great talent and can make things happen. But it's just all about how these teams want to go after the Seahawks, right? And
the other thing here is like there will come a time, like they're waiting for it, that they're waiting for where a team plays middle field close, single high against the Seahawks. I'd imagine the Cardinals will do a bit of that.
Yeah.
And when that happens, and it's like, especially if it's press coverage, they'll throw the ball at DK. Like they'll try it deep. I felt in the 49ers game, and sort of what inspired, I think, some of Carroll's comments was they did play quite a bit of cover 3. Okay, the cornerbacks were off, but like there was probably, I mean, if they'd had more plays in that awful second half, but there was probably like 1 or 2 opportunities to go and have a deep shot against the cover 3 cornerback in off coverage.
And Geno hasn't been scared to throw that to DK either when he's covered. Like he's, the touchdown that he had against Atlanta, he was covered.
Great point.
There was the double pass in San Francisco that ended up getting called back. Like, Geno hasn't been shy to pull the trigger there. So I'm sure as soon as they get that look, they're Geno's going right to that.
Yeah. I agree. So Detroit themselves, it turns out a pretty injured football team.
Yeah, so their first injury report here on Wednesday is it's pretty busy. So TJ Hawkinson, their starting tight end, has a foot injury. He did not practice today. Amon-Ra St. Brown, their star second-year receiver, didn't practice with an ankle injury. DeAndre Swift, their running back, is out with or did not practice on Wednesday with an ankle and shoulder injury. They have 2 of their starters on the offensive line did not practice. So they are, at least offensively speaking, really banged up right now. Don't know how serious any of these injuries are, if they're actually, going to threaten their availability for the upcoming game. But I mean, you look at St. Brown, who's off to a great start this year, and he's been an absolute weapon for them. If he can't go, or if he's not at 100%, and I mean, of course, everyone in the NFL isn't really 100%, but as the saying goes, but if he's not at the best of his capabilities, that would be pretty huge for the Seahawks, right? Because like they do a lot of really cool stuff with St. Brown.
Oh yeah, he's been incredible. Like he broke some record for catching so many passes in so many weeks in a row. And he's the kind of player who is a problem for Seattle because they can move him around so much, and it's like
he can run the football out of the backfield. He can do pretty much everything.
Right. So it's hard to game plan for. They can just find a mismatch, and so that would be big news. They got DJ Chark, right? Is he?
Yeah, and he was limited today. He was limited today with a ankle injury as well. So on top of Shark, I'm trying to think who else they have in their receiving core right now. I'm gonna look it up, but they I'm sure they have like one other guy that's like pretty good.
While you do that, that's big news. Chark's more like a kind of outside type, not really a movable piece, and Jamal Williams has actually been pretty good in sort of backup duty, and their run game's so diverse and their O-line's been so good that I'm not sure how much Swift being out matters if he is out. But
Josh Reynolds from the Rams.
Of course, Goff likes targeting him and
he also did not practice with an ankle injury.
Wow, they're hurt. They're hurt. That was a tough game. I was surprised they lost that one.
Yeah, because didn't they get off to like a 17-point lead or something like that?
They were up big, and they went for it on 4th downs, and they were getting it, and it was very vibey. And then I was watching Red Zone, but then suddenly you're like, what happened here? So that's something to look back at and be interested in.
So what do you think about Dan Campbell? What's your thoughts on old MCDC?
Well, we have so much in common, right? Like he wears a hat. I'm currently wearing a hat.
You're both completely unhinged.
Yeah, both. Yeah, big time unhinged. I enjoy a White Russian occasionally, and he is like the dude, right? And
the
other big thing is he likes coffee. I really like coffee. Like I really like coffee. I don't know if I'm as well. Actually, that's not true. I definitely would do what he does. What was his order from Starbucks? It was like, have you seen that?
No, I don't think I have.
What?
Was
You
that
haven't
from
seen?
was that from Hard Knocks?
No, no, it's before that.
Oh,
He
no,
has
no.
he has 2 ventis of the Pike Brew sponsored, plus 2 shots of espresso.
Oh, wow.
So, how big is a venti here? I think that's
I mean, like my kind of like my water bottle here. It's like taller than my face or taller than my head.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I've been known to. Has this taken over? I believe it originated from New Zealand, but has the flat white taken over?
Flat white.
The flat white is flat
Is that
white
like
coffee,
oh, actually no, I think I have seen that. Now that yeah.
right?
I think I have seen that. See, I'm not a
Oh,
coffee drinker. My wife is though, but I'm not a big coffee drinker.
couldn't be me. So the flat
Yeah.
white apparently originated in either Australia or New Zealand, but it's hotly disputed according to Wikipedia, which
Mm,
is never wrong. But then it suddenly emerged in the UK as like a phenomenon, right?
mm,
And what is so nice about that is it is 2 shots of espresso, right?
mm.
Rather than the original one with milk. Now, what I like particularly doing is adding a 3rd shot of espresso to that, and then having sort of 5 in a day, which is very exciting and sort of occasionally a bit jittery. But so I'm kind of like Dan Campbell is what I'm saying. So yes, I like Dan
Yeah.
Campbell. The grit he's built into the program is noticeable. He's so likable.
Mhm.
He was really upset after their last game. He like put it all on himself. I think players respect that because with that sort of deal, it's like a fine line between being honest and accountable and fun
Mhm.
to being like corny and like cringy and bad. But he actually seems like he can coach. And when he was calling offense, by the way, their offense was kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
So there you go. But I mean, what do you think about DC?
Well, to me, like, you talk about the culture, and for me, it kind of reminds me of the early Pete Carroll Seahawks, where it was like, okay, they're building a culture there that's not like anything else in the NFL. There's just like there's something that's different. Obviously, it brings in elements of like other cultures and other, whatever, but like it's kind of Dan Campbell's world there. And he just does things differently, and he does not give an absolute what. So it's awesome. I mean, I love Dan Campbell. I love all the crazy press conferences, and I love it. I love it. I watched a little bit of Hard Knocks, and like that team rules, man. Like I honestly like obviously I want to beat them on Sunday, but like they're a lot of fun. Like I'm kind of pulling for them this year. They're like he just the way that he coaches, like and the aggressiveness on the field. Like, what do you think about his on-field coaching? Like a lot of the going for it on 4th downs and
Well, how
stuff like
cool is
that.
that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and he isn't. I mean, he is a former tight end, right? He's an offensive
Mm,
dude, so perhaps that's a bit different. But I feel again what I said about how it can go wrong quite quickly. The perception of him was uncertain, right? And I think some people may have wrongly thought he'd make bad coaching decisions. But the fact that he's so aggressive on 4th down is awesome. Like he's gung ho. Um, Actually, what happened in this last game was that he wasn't at the end, and he really regretted not being. But up until that point, but then it's 4th and 3 with Jared Goff, and you've already used up some of your 4th down things. So it's like, but he was very regretful, remorseful after that moment. But yeah, he seems to be doing a really good job. And just going back to the culture thing, like you go from Matt Patricia, right,
mhm,
to Dan Campbell, like it's exactly what they needed because their ownership position is very unusual and
mhm.
kind of odd. And the head coach is like even bigger part of like the image of that franchise, and also like the Lions have been through a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, what I'd and we hear today like inevitably Pete Carroll gets asked about Conjay Diggs, who obviously got traded for pittance under Patricia, and
Mm,
it's like wow, I don't think Conjay Diggs a pillar of a locker room, if anything, he's sort of the embodiment of the kind of player that Dan Campbell is
Yeah.
looking for with the Lions now. So it's come full circle.
Yeah. And, it's like when you look at last year as well, and like they were awful, right? I think they only won like 4 games or something like that last year, but they just like they play like that's a team that very clearly loves and respects its coach. Like
Yes.
they were just, they weren't very good, but they were giving it everything they had, and it's like, they're just playing their poor little hearts out, basically, and it's like, I mean, but that's what you want to see, that's what you want to see, from a when you're, because that's such a huge part of being an NFL head coach, because you can have the scheme and everything down and all that, but you have to be able to build a culture, build a comfortable culture where people, get along and like, they actually feel empowered, right? That's what Pete Carroll's whole philosophy is built upon, is making players feel empowered. And so you have to, I mean, at least from my perspective, that's the best way of coaching. That's the best way, no matter what sport you're in, really, because you have to build a because at the end of the day, this is a work environment that you're talking about. An NFL locker room is a work environment, and you have to build a work environment that people feel comfortable in. Right?
Yep.
And so Dan Campbell does that.
Well, and them not tanking, them fighting for every blade of grass last season. Really, that was kind of a positive example for the Seahawks this time round. Why would you tank? Like, tanking is so damaging to a culture. Now you can do it in a look at what the Browns went and did. Where I mean, some would say they didn't fully see it through, but that was just crazy. Much more fun as a fan, right? Surely to root for a team where there's at least something. And I know some of the Seahawks fan base is split over whether the team is doing the right thing currently. But for me, like, it's so hard to build a positive culture in the first place. And it's a thorny thing because culture's hard to there's no metric for culture, right? It's hard to measure.
And guys feel better about it when you actually, give a damn. Like, especially towards the end of the season. Like when
this is their livelihoods. Yeah. This is their, this
and they're
going
to be more excited
for them.
They're more excited to get back.
Where they're risking a lot. Yeah, more excited to get back. Like it's big. And once you've lost it, you can't get it back. Like you have to be building something. So
yeah, you're more incentivized to put the work in to get back. I mean, it's kind of like what we saw going from 2011 with the Seahawks and then going into 2012. Right. It's like, they kind of got on a little bit of a heater there towards the end, weren't necessarily in playoff position, but they, there was a chance there. There was a very outside chance. And then they they kind of rode that momentum into the next year. So, that's, I think that's kind of what we're seeing with this Lions team right now, right? Because they were going for it there towards the end, and now they're coming out hot. They're 2-1, right? Are they 2-1 or are they 1-2?
Surely they're not 1-2. This is we will be previewing the Lions game in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
Next. Well, tomorrow, but
they they're 1-2. They're 1-2.
That's crazy because they don't feel like a 1-2 team, and their offense
they don't feel like a 1-2 team,
and their defense plays hard. Like that's kind of wild. So a big game because one of these teams is going to fall to 1-3, which I mean, that seems tough on either of them. NFL's tough. Positive news, Ty. After I almost did a eulogy for Trey Brown,
you did last Wednesday.
Look, I was just showing concern, okay? Pete Carroll sounded concerned. Well, it sounds like he's made great progress and he was running, which that's important. You have to run in football, but recovering from that patella tendon injury and I think surgery. But the second-year cornerback, sounds like 2 to 3 weeks was the timeline which emerged.
Yeah, so he's running full speed, and Pete said earlier today in his press conference that it seems like 2 to 3 weeks for Trey Brown, which is great news because I mean, last Wednesday, as we were talking about when you were talking about him, the way that Pete was talking, kind of seemed like, like Trey's not progressing very well right now. Is he going to play this season? Like, because we know how Pete Carroll is when he talks about injuries, and when even he starts to crack and shows concern in press conferences, it's like, oh, this is like actually really serious. So I don't blame you for being like legitimately concerned about what that may have meant. But so this is great news, and this is I mean, last year, like we have to see, because this is such a gnarly injury coming back from a patellar tendon. It's possible that he will. I mean, it's more likely than not that he will not be the same player that he was ever again. But
Yeah,
I mean, the player that we saw last year was, I mean, he was one of the best corners in football during the few weeks that he played. So
yeah, well,
so that would be a huge boost to get him back. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I apologize for interrupting you. Like if you think about Will Dissly coming back, like he didn't have the same like rookie year explosion. Jimmy Graham had this injury, and he was never quite the same level of athlete. And like, what was Trey Brown's defining characteristic? Well, he was not a tight end for a start, but his burst and like twitch out of breaks was incredible. Short area quickness in a straight line, and if that's gone, then that's tough. Like corner is a position where movement skills are like the thing. Like you really have to be able to move. Now you can be long and do it, but if Brown's like a smaller guy, he really does need to be able to do that. If he's back like fully, which would, I mean, I don't think we can expect that, because this used to be like a career ender, a bit like how ACL injuries used to be, and then they sort of have developed over the years. But if Brown is fully back, maybe science has developed in a way, then there's a potential for him to come in and compete for the nickel spot along with left corner as well. So hopefully he has fully recovered. But more importantly, it's just good to hear that he's coming back, because that must have been a really tough process for him. And just being off on your own and wondering whether you can make it onto the field and not making it back in time for the preseason. He's going to be playing catch up from a scheme standpoint. Like all the language has changed in the playbook, even if they are running similar coverage concepts. There's a slightly different emphasis to more middle field open looks, whereas last year, even though they're running these middle field open looks, they were still middle field closed, cover 3, cover 1 kind of team. But yeah, I mean, positive news today, so that's good.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. How do you think that he'll kind of fit into this whole cornerback situation they have right now? Because obviously they got Mike Jackson. They, Sydney's still around, even though that they made him a healthy scratch on Sunday. Like they do have guys. The Artie Burns is apparently coming back. So how do you kind of see him fitting in this whole thing?
Confirmed guys. Yeah, it's kind of what I said. It's difficult for him to come back. I think Sydney's the next guy up as the corner 3. I mean, the real area would be Brown contributing on special teams, right? Like they've had Isaiah Dunn playing specials. Well, if Brown's ready, then I imagine Dunn gets released, put on the practice. Maybe Dunn is on the practice squad already. He might not be on the no, he is on the active roster because they claimed him, right? So yeah.
And they signed Xavier Coleman.
Yeah, and he's been activated off the practice squad. Oh, they signed him to the active roster now.
Yeah, he was the corresponding move for Homer going on the IR, which I guess we should also talk about real quick. Travis Homer's on the IR, unfortunately.
Yeah, so just to wrap that up, yeah, I imagine Brown replaces one of them, contributes on special teams. If he's looking good, then he unlikely to feature at corner unless something really bad starts happening at the corner position where they have to rotate through. But yeah, Homer to the IR sounded bad, like in terms of he's hurt his ribs. Carroll's mentioning after the game some cartilage involved. Sounded like he's very sore. Now Homer has 2 elements: his special teams, where he's an excellent special teamer, but then also his pass protection, which may have caused like a Twitter war via me last one season, or maybe the season before, 2020.
I believe it was 2020.
I believe the quote was, if you are criticizing why Travis Homer gets snaps at the Seahawks, you don't understand football. And why I said that was, and I've tried to be a bit more positive on Twitter, but what I said that was, a lot of people were sort of criticizing the Seahawks for Travis Homer getting snaps on offense, but his value is as a passing down back, where his pass protection, other than that Geno Smith touchdown against the Broncos, has been flawless. Like, he is really good at recognizing where to help out, like, because sometimes a rusher comes from the opposite side and you have to get all the way across the formation to pick him up. So he's got good, scanning with his eyes. But then two, he's also physical and stands guys up along with just understanding the scheme. So the passing down role was fulfilled last week by DJ Dallas on third downs and passing downs as a pass protector. He's okay. He still has some stuff to prove in that area, but they clearly trust him to do that. But the Seahawks have obviously picked up some running backs on the back end of the roster to try and complement that depth, add to the depth because of Homer's loss. But, the running back position is brutal, and this is why they add so many different types of backs, different types of players in the back end of the roster, because injuries happen, and especially at the back position, unfortunately, it's kind of inevitable that at least one or two, or maybe three ends up getting hurt.
We saw it in 2015. We saw it again in what was the year that they signed Marshawn again for the last game? 2019? Yeah, 2019. Yeah, because it was DK's rookie year. Yeah, 2015 when Marshawn and Rawls went down, like they had DeJuan Harris getting legitimate snaps at one point.
Oh my word, yeah.
Yeah, so wow. You got to have that depth. And as far as Homer goes, this is going to be a bigger loss than I think a lot of people think, because of the value on special teams and the value in pass protection, but especially on special teams, because he's been such a huge contributor to there. It feels like he's always making plays every single week on special teams. He's a dude on special teams, one of those actual special guys that plays that role. So that really sucks. That really sucks for him. Hopefully he's able to come back. But yeah, that's a pretty big blow for the Seahawks.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's like you said, a designated to return deal, not season ending.
Mm-hmm.
I know they loosened up the rules there in recent years to make that a bit easier, but yeah. So Russell Wilson update. But before that, Pete Carroll actually spoke about the sort of stylistic contrast between Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, and it honestly sounded like an episode of Seattle Overload, like what I was saying earlier today, but also Griffin's obsession with min-maxing and what you can do and what you can't do, and how much of it you can do and how much of it you can't do, and all of that sort of stuff. Where he said, paraphrasing, but he didn't think anyone's better than Russell Wilson at throwing the deep ball, and that Russell relied on those plays with his great touch. But now he doesn't feel that's the strength of the game. They're not just trying to bomb the ball up. They want to use the whole field. And just like the seam moves that Geno throws so well, it's not the number one priority for us to bomb the ball downfield. That was something we really had to do in the past, which, oh my word, that's literally what we've always said. With Russell, he was so efficient at his peak. He was so efficient at throwing one of the hardest balls in football, the go ball, the sideline fade. But he couldn't access other areas of the field. But you can only throw so many sideline fades until the efficiency just dips, even for Russell Wilson. And then what else are you going to do? You can't throw the intermediate stuff. So you either throw checkdowns or you run the football, which is what we've always said. Whereas with Geno, when he drops back 44 times, you can do that because he can slice and dice it all over the field. Now, he can't throw a deep ball like Russell Wilson, and he can't throw a go ball, certainly, or fade ball like Russell Wilson. But that was funny. And Ty, as we're sort of repeating ourselves, but as we saw on Sunday Night Football, the go ball and the fade ball for Russell Wilson against these new kind of defenses, the new wave of defenses, the trendy in vogue thing of middle field open, it's tough for him.
Yeah, it's starting to regress, and and even the touchdown that he got against the Seahawks, he underthrew the ball. It's the quality of the ball in general, I think, is starting to regress a little bit. I mean, like, he's still an excellent deep ball thrower, don't get me wrong, but like, I think we're seeing some natural regression on that front, as you would expect with someone that's starting to creep into the second half of their 50s. So, or 50s, geez,
50.
whoa,
He's not Tom
30s.
Brady.
30s. So, because he's 34 now, it's getting a little bit older. The legs are starting to go as well. Like, yeah. So, and, of course, schematically, right? Like, he's struggling with these coverages, and we've seen him struggle with these coverages for the last, couple of years now. So, and it's just, he's not really like showing an ability to adapt to that either. But, it's funny how now it feels like every time that Pete opens his mouth about Russ nowadays, like, he just gets spicier and spicier and spicier. I love that quote that you just read from him. That was
Well,
a
it's just being
lot of fun to
honest though.
unpack.
Like he
Yeah, no,
wasn't
it
able to
is.
ever really be. You can't really tell people that's how it works when he's your quarterback. But now it's like, and that Sunday night football game was just everything we saw with the Seahawks, right? Like the only thing Russ did well
It was like watching the Seahawks.
Yeah,
like,
it really was. It really was.
Yeah.
And the only thing Russ did well was he managed to scramble left late and find like he could have just stood in the pocket and hit his cover 2 beater down the sideline, but he managed to scramble left and hit it late in the hole, and he did leave the game. He did lead the game-winning drive, but I mean, Jimmy G was an absolute abomination. He was just so bad. That was a really tough game. What was the stat that the Broncos were the first team to win up? They had so many 3 and outs. They had so many punts. I can't remember the exact.
That was the most 3 and outs in Russell's career in that game. Which honestly, kind of crazy to think about when we've seen the Seahawks like score 5 points against the Bucks before. Like, you feel like, I don't know, something like worse happened in one of those games. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's when you're getting booed in each of your first 2 home games, like, you're in hell. as a player, as an offense, and obviously they're not just booing Russ, but like, this is bad. Like, I just watching on Sunday and even just being totally objective here, right? Like, trying to remove myself as just kind of the salty, Seahawks person here. Like, it's bad. Like, the product is bad. Like, you cannot, like, the fact that he called that championship football afterwards, like, is ridiculous. Like, you're not winning most games scoring 11 points or 9 points.
3 and outs.
Yeah. 8 3 and outs. And and it was they scored 9 points as an offensive unit, right? And like, against the 49ers, like, that's good defense, but still, like, you can't do that. But it's kind of easy to predict though, right? Because like, the 49ers know how to defend Russell Wilson. They've been doing it for years and years and years, and they know, just like anyone else, how you defend Russell Wilson. It's it's pretty straightforward. You just got to execute.
I don't know, man. Like,
and we're seeing the results of that.
It's going to be very interesting watching it play out. They are still 2-1, the Broncos, and their defense looks nasty. And not every team is going to be as good at playing middle field open coverages as the 49ers are, and mixing it in. But also Russell, like, I don't know. I think we saw this coming. We really did. And what's interesting to me as well is how, like, Pete Carroll took a lot of the heat off Russell Wilson. Like, he was the scapegoat a lot of times. So was the offensive coordinator. Now Russell's in Denver. Like, sure, Hackett's getting a lot of blame, but Russell's really put himself in the firing line. That's what happens when when it plays out like it did, and all this stuff. And so how he ends up handling all that is going to be interesting.
Well, and you see how the national folks are taking it right now, and like what they're doing with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and the narrative's really shifted on him. Like, a few years ago, what we were saying about Russell was considered, out there. Now it's become, to me, it's almost swung too far the other way. Like, I actually think, I mean, what is fine? Like, I think they'll be fine in the sense, I think Russ will get over 4,000 passing yards, and I think, he'll throw, 30 plus touchdowns, and which right now seems bold, right? And I think they'll probably finish 8 and 9, 9 and 8, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I consider fine. But I think a lot of the narratives that they're completely completely screwed. Well, you could say like they didn't give up all that to go 8-9, 9-8, and have a fairly productive passing game, which gets choked out by a certain style of defense. But still,
yeah. All right. So what else do we have?
Well, I wanted to talk about Pete Carroll's comments in his radio show again, which was Seattle Sports with Brock and Salk. Good to have those guys back together, where Carroll said that there's some things after 3 games that he can see differently, like from a scheme perspective, and that they need to adjust a couple of things. And he said he wasn't sure how they'd play some blocks and principles that they're defending, playing the run game. And he's saying that they just need to adjust a bit and got some stuff to do. And he says we need to help like guys more with the execution wise, again, mentioning scheme and fix some things up. So that made me wonder, like we were moaning after the game about how the Seahawks are really running so much nickel, like 2-4-5 or 4-2-5 fronts where it's even spacing. So it looks like 4 down on the field, and it's like and it's basically an over front, an over G front. So you have a defensive end, then you have a 3 technique on the outside side of the guard, defense tackle. The defensive end, sorry, is an outside linebacker, but he's on the edge of the defense. Then you have a 2-eye technique who's on the inside shoulder of the guard. That's like the nose tackle, defensive tackle. And then you have another outside linebacker on the defensive edge. And then you have Cody Barton and Jordan Brooks in the box. And they've been running that so often. And I just think Carroll's saying that there's some stuff they need to do scheme-wise. Like, I did wonder if it meant they're going to try and do more bear fronts from nickel. Now, how you do that is either you say, well, Kobe Bryant, you just come into the box occasionally if the offensive formation dictates, or you play 3 safety packages, which is supposedly a big part of their offseason plan was to have Jamal Adams do this and basically take it, and it does mean playing 3-3-5 personnel. So it takes Cody Barton off the field, and it would place strong safety into the box next to him. But Adams is down. So then is it Ryan Neal? Do they trust Ryan Neal?
So that's what I was going to ask was like, do you think Neal can at least do some of the stuff? That obviously he's not Jamal Adams. Not saying that he is or anything like that, but like, is he able to do at least some of the stuff that they would maybe hope to do with Jamal?
I mean, yes, he is. But to me, it's like, why not just play Cody Barton and just play a bare front? Like,
sure, yeah. Instead of just trying to make it work.
The reason they're running, like Hurt talked about it today. He said playing Atlanta, he was asked by Mike Dugar of The Athletic why they were doing this like 4-2-5 stuff and not more like 5 down nickel fronts. And he said that Atlanta was using different personnel groups and like looking at why they do that. And, Kyle Pitts, is he actually going to run block, or is it to try and get a mismatch? And how basically if they're in 13 personnel, 12 personnel, it could be playing more like 11 personnel because of the kind of crazy athlete that Pitts is. And basically he's a wide receiver, but a tight end. But for me, the real key to that was what we said after the game. The reason they're doing the nickel stuff is because it gives them pressure and coverage opportunities. That's what Hurt says. He likes to have the pressure and coverage opportunities. And so like if you're in nickel, you can play all of your coverages because you're comfortable with the nickel being able to match up with guys. Whereas if that's a linebacker type or even a safety type, you're probably less comfortable doing that. And then pressure wise, you can blitz a linebacker, you can blitz a safety, or you can blitz a nickel. Whereas if you scale it back a bit, they don't have the schematic diversity in their base calls. Like ultimately, they're designed mainly to be nickel, and they've lost Adams, who was their added wrinkle for like a different nickel presentation of pressure. Whereas now you're only going to bring pressure from a bat like Brooks, right? Maybe you could bring it from a nickel as well, but if you're in the bear stuff. So yeah, it doesn't sound like Hurt's comments. It didn't sound like he was going to change much. But then why would he tell you that? For Hurt, it sounded like he was talking about basically the understanding has to improve, the consistency has to improve, and then the coaching has to improve. But I don't know how quickly that can improve. Like if they get gashed by the Lions, and people have been talking up like, oh, Jared Goff's not that mobile. The problem with Mariota, the problem with Trey Lance, who got hurt, so it doesn't really work, does it? Was that they were mobile quarterbacks. It's like, yeah, true, but also
no, the Mariota didn't run for 179 yards.
yeah.
Come on. Yeah, let's like this team has very like deep schematic and fundamental issues right now that it has to work through. Like it's got a lot to figure out here, and who knows if it's going to figure out everything. But yeah, no, it's not mobile quarterbacks, and Jared Goff not being mobile is not going to suddenly fix things. You're not going to see the Seahawks give up like only 7 points this weekend. I mean, I hope they do, but like if Amon Ross St. Brown's playing, if that's a little scary.
Oh, and Clint Hurt was agitated in his press conference.
He looked pissed.
He was sped up, he was angsty, like he's very frustrated, clearly, which I mean he would be, because it's not going to plan right now. It's been a difficult start to being a coordinator. We'll delve into his comments in a kind of schemy review in our tape podcast, which comes out tomorrow. Until then, please, if you're still watching, thank you very much. Like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you're listening, subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review, follow at Seattle Overload, follow Ty at Dane Gonzalez. There's no vowels in there. And follow me at Matty F. Brown. We appreciate you, and we're excited to delve into the tape, where, you know, often watching the tape brings a bit more optimism around. So I'm hoping that's what happens, because right now I'm feeling tough about the last game, but I'm excited for the Detroit game.
Yes, we're on to Detroit, folks. We are on to Detroit. And, you know, of course, last week's tape review brought some optimism after a rough game against the 49ers. So hopefully you and Griff will allow us to feel a little bit better about this the Seahawks team at 1-2 heading into Detroit. See how it goes. We're also going to get some predictions on tomorrow, so we'll do all that fun stuff. So look forward to that. We'll see you guys next time.